They called him Saint Anthony, firstly because his name was Anthony, and secondly, perhaps, because he was a jester, a merrymaker, an indefatigable prankster, a glutton and a connoisseur of strong drink, who, despite being well past 60, had not lost his interest in the servant girls. He was a tall fellow, a native of Cox, with a sun-tanned face, a broad chest, and a formidable belly. His long legs, however, seemed too slender for such a burly frame. Having been widowed, he lived alone on his farm with a maidservant and 2 farmhands. He managed his estate like a wily old fox, mindful of his profit and well-versed in matters of livestock and crops. His 2 sons and 3 daughters, all married and settled, lived nearby and would visit their father once a month for dinner. In the district, he was reputed to be a man of great strength, and a saying had even taken root, as strong as St. Anthony. On the eve of the Prussian invasion, Anthony, sitting in the tavern, had boasted that he would swallow the entire army whole, for he was a true Norman, boastful, a bit of a coward, but full of bluster. He banged his fist on the table, making it jump and the crockery rattle, and his face flushing, his eyes narrowing, he yelled, "God damn it, I'll eat the lot of them for breakfast." He was certain the Prussians would never make it to Tanville. But when word came that they were already in Rawtot, he holed up at home and stopped showing his face in the street, constantly peering out the kitchen window as if expecting to see the glint of bayonets on the road at any moment. One morning, as he was breakfasting with his workers, the door flew open, and on the threshold appeared the village mayor, his crony Shicket, accompanied by a soldier in a black helmet with a brass spike. Anthony sprang to his feet. Everyone stared at him, expecting him to tear the Prussian to pieces. But he merely shook the mayor's hand, who said, "Here's one for you too, St. Anthony. They arrived last night. Don't you dare try anything funny. They've threatened to shoot everyone and burn the village to the ground if anything happens. You've been warned. Feed him. He doesn't look like a bad sort. Right, I must be off. There's enough for everyone." And he left. Anthony, having turned pale, stared at the soldier. He was stocky, fair-haired, with blue eyes and a beard that reached up to his cheekbones. He had a simple, shy, but good-natured look about him. The cunning Norman saw right through him, calmed down, and with a gesture invited him to sit. Then he asked, "Want some soup?" The German didn't understand. So Anthony, growing bolder, thrust a full bowl under his nose and said, "Here, get this down you fat pig." The soldier answered, "Ja," and fell upon the food with gusto. Triumphant, Anthony winked at his workers, who, stifling both laughter and fear, were pulling faces. When the bowl was empty, Anthony offered a second. That one was scraped clean, too. But the soldier could only manage half of the third, despite the host's insistent urging. "Come on now, stuff this one into your belly, too. Get nice and fat, my pig." The soldier, realizing they simply wanted to stuff him full, laughed and made it clear he was full to bursting. By now, Anthony had taken a complete liking to his guest. He slapped him on the stomach and exclaimed, "My pig's belly is as tight as a drum." But suddenly he doubled over, turned red as if struck by apoplexy, and couldn't utter a word. He was so convulsed with laughter at a sudden thought. "That's it. St. Anthony and his pig. There she is, my pig." The maidservant and the workers burst out laughing. The old man was so delighted that he ordered a bottle of his old liqueur, the best in his reserves, to be brought out and treated everyone. They even clinked glasses with the Prussian, who, sipping his drink, smacked his lips to show how much he liked it. And Anthony, Looking him straight in the face, he yelled, "See? That's real liquor. You won't taste anything like that back home, my pig." From that day on, Old Man Anthony was inseparable from his Prussian. It became his amusement and his revenge, the revenge of a cunning fat man. The whole village, terrified of the invaders, laughed behind their backs at the antics of Saint Anthony. He was unmatched in his jesting. Only he could have dreamed up such a thing. Ah, the old fox. Every day after lunch, Uncle Anthony would go visiting his neighbors, leading his German by the arm and presenting him with a jovial air, slapping him on the shoulder. "Here she is, my pig. Look how fat this creature's gotten." The peasants, upon seeing them, would break into broad grins. "What a joker you are, Anthony, you old rascal. Want me to sell him to you for 3 pistoles, Cesar? It's a deal, Anthony. And come in for some sausage while you're at it. I'd only take the hams," another would wink. "Feel that belly. Nothing but lard," a third would add. They all snickered and exchanged glances, but furtively, afraid the Prussian might catch on that he was being made fun of. Anthony alone grew bolder with each passing day. He'd pinch the German's thighs, exclaiming, "Pure fat," slap his backside in thunder, "All pigskin," and sometimes even lift him into the air with his powerful arms, as if he were a sack of grain, and announce with great importance, 600 kilos live weight, and not a gram of shrinkage. He made it a habit to demand treats for his pig wherever he went. It became his daily joy and chief amusement. "Bring out whatever you have," he would say. "He'll devour it all." And they would bring the German bread and butter, baked potatoes, cold beef, and even sausage, saying, "It's all for you, and the best quality, too." The simple, gentle soldier ate out of politeness, touched by such attention. He ate until his stomach ached, just so as not to offend his hosts. He truly had grown so stout that his uniform became tight. This delighted Anthony, who would remark, "Listen here, pig, it's time we built you a bigger sty." In time, they became genuine friends. And when the old man had business in the surrounding area, the Prussian willingly accompanied him, simply for the pleasure of his company. It was a fierce winter. The frost had gripped the earth, and it seemed as if the winter of 1870 itself had decided to unleash all its woes upon France. Anthony, a provident and calculating man, foresaw that by spring he would run short of manure for his fields. He bought some from a neighbor in need, arranging to collect a cartload every evening. And so it began. At dusk he would set out daily for the Halt farm, half a league from his house, and invariably accompanied by his pig. Each visit turned into a veritable feast. The whole village would gather, as for Sunday Mass, to watch the animal being fed. The Prussian, however, had begun to grow somewhat wary. When the laughter grew too loud, he would look around anxiously, and a spark of distrust would sometimes flash in his eyes. One evening, having eaten his fill, he tried to get up, refusing a second helping. But Anthony, not wanting the spectacle to end, placed his powerful hands on the man's shoulders and forced him back down into his seat with such force that the chair cracked and splintered beneath the soldier. A roar of laughter erupted. Beaming, Anthony helped his pig up from the floor, pretending to tend to his wounds, and exclaimed triumphantly, "If you won't eat, then by God, you'll drink." And they immediately sent to the tavern for brandy. The soldier rolled his eyes angrily, but drank anyway. He drank as much as they poured for him, and St. Anthony kept pace, to the great delight of the entire audience. The Norman, flushed as a ripe tomato and with fiery eyes, poured clinked glasses, and thundered, "To your health." And the German, in silence, gulped down the brandy in one go, one glass after another. It was a real duel, a battle, a revenge match. Who would outdrink whom, damn it? When the leader was finished, neither could drink any more. But neither had fallen. They were dead even. That meant a new round next time. They staggered out and set off, walking beside the cart laden with manure, which was being pulled slowly by two horses. Snow was falling, and in the moonless night the dead plain lay bleakly white. The cold cut to the bone, which only intensified the drunkenness. St. Anthony, frustrated by his failure to win, amused himself by shoving his pig with his shoulder, trying to push the Prussian into the ditch. The soldier, stepping back, dodged the shoves and each time muttered something irritated in German, which made the peasant roar with laughter until he cried. Finally, the Prussian snapped. Just as Anthony swung his leg for another kick, the soldier responded with a powerful punch from his fist that made the giant stagger. Anthony, fired up by the liquor, grabbed the German, shook him like a puppy, and with all his strength flung him across the road. Satisfied, he crossed his arms over his chest and burst out laughing again. But the Prussian scrambled to his feet. His head was bare, his helmet had rolled away, and, drawing his saber, rushed at Uncle Anthony. The old man, quick to react, seized his long maple whip, straight and supple as a bull's sinew. The Prussian advanced, head bent low, saber extended, ready to deliver a fatal blow. But the old man caught the blade, deflected it to the side, and with the butt of his whip struck his enemy hard on the temple. The soldier collapsed at his feet. Anthony, stunned, stared at the body, which at first twitched and then lay still and stretched out on the snow. He bent over, turned it, and peered at it for a long time. The Prussian lay with his eyes closed, a thin trickle of blood oozing from the wound on his forehead. Even in the darkness of the night, Anthony could make out a dark stain on the snow. He stood frozen, unable to move, and the horses, unaware of the trouble, slowly drew the cart further away. What now? They would shoot him. They would burn his farm. They would ravage the whole village. What to do? Where to hide the body? How to conceal the murder? How to deceive the Prussians? In the silence, amid the snowy emptiness, he heard voices. In a panic, he picked up the helmet, placed it on the dead man's head, hoisted the body, ran, caught up with the cart, and flung it onto the manure. He would think of something once he got home. He trudged slowly, racking his brains, but could find no way out. He already saw himself as a dead man. He drove into the yard. A light was in the dormer window. The maidservant was still up. He quickly backed the cart to the edge of the manure pit. Realizing the body, lying on top, would be the first to fall in, he tipped the cart over. As expected, the body was buried under the manure. Anthony leveled the pile with his pitchfork, drove the fork into the ground, called for the stable hand, ordered him to put the horses in their stalls, and went to his room. He lay down, but his thoughts gave him no peace. None of them offered salvation. His terror grew in the night's silence. They would shoot him. He broke into a sweat. His teeth began to chatter. He sat up, trembling as if with a fever, unable to lie still any longer. He went down to the kitchen, took a bottle of brandy from the sideboard, and went back upstairs. After draining 2 glasses in quick succession, he added a fresh dose of alcohol to his existing drunkenness, but the anxiety in his soul did not subside. And just how hard he had hit him, damn it all. He paced the room, inventing all sorts of tricks, excuses, and loopholes, repeatedly wetting his throat with a glass to keep his spirits up. But nothing useful came to mind. Nothing at all. By midnight, his watchdog, a mastiff called Destroyer, began to howl, a long, ominous howl, the way dogs howl for the dead. Uncle Anthony felt a chill to the very marrow of his bones, and every time the howl repeated, an icy cold ran over his skin. He collapsed into a chair, exhausted, stunned, and numb, waiting in horror for Destroyer to sound off again. He was shaken by fits of fear, the kind that make even the strongest nerves tremble. The clock downstairs struck 5. The dog did not fall silent. The peasant began to lose his mind. He got up and went out, resolved to untie the dog, if only to no longer hear that howling. He went down, unlocked the door, and stepped into the night's darkness. The snow was still falling. Everything was white all around. The farm buildings stood out as black stains against the snow. He approached the kennel. The dog was straining at its chain. He set it free. Destroyer lunged forward, but then froze, bristling, paws dug into the ground, baring its teeth and stretching its muzzle towards the manure pit. St. Anthony, trembling all over, whispered, "What's the matter with you, cursed beast?" He took a few steps, peering into the murky half-light of the yard, and then he saw it, a figure, a human figure, sitting right on top of the manure pile. He froze, seized with horror, barely breathing. But, noticing the handle of the pitchfork stuck in the ground nearby, he wrenched it out in a surge of panic, the kind that makes even the most hopeless coward brave, and rushed forward to see who it was. It was him, his Prussian. He had crawled out from under the layer of manure, which had apparently warmed him and brought him back to life. He had managed to get up, but remained sitting there, covered in filth and blood, in the falling snow, still drunk, stunned from the blow, and weakened from blood loss. Seeing Anthony, he tried to rise, but was too dazed to comprehend anything. And then the old man, recognizing him, flew into a rage like a wild animal, and hissed through his teeth, "Ah, you pig, so you didn't croak. Now you'll give me away. Just you wait. Just you wait." He lunged forward, raising the pitchfork like a spear, and with fury drove it into the German's chest, all for iron tines. The soldier fell onto his back, letting out a long, hoarse death rattle, and the old man, pulling the pitchfork out, began plunging it in again and again, into the stomach, the sides, the neck, like a madman, piercing the body in all directions until blood gushed from it in streams. Finally, he stopped, panting, gulping air greedily, calmed by the fact that he had finished the job. But the roosters in the hen houses were already crowing, and the sky was beginning to lighten. He set to work again. He had to hide the dead man. He dug a hole in the manure down to the earth, and then dug even deeper, working frantically, wielding his hands and his whole body with fury. When the hole seemed deep enough to him, he dumped the corpse into it, covered it with soil, tamped it down for a long time, replaced the manure, and smirked, watching as the thick snow finished his work, covering the traces with a white blanket. He stuck the pitchfork back into the pile and returned to the house. The bottle of brandy, half empty, stood on the table. He drank it to the last drop, collapsed onto the bed, and fell into a dead sleep. He woke up sober, calm, with a clear head. He could now comprehend what had happened and figure out what to do next. Within an hour, he was running around the village, asking everyone he met about his soldier. He even went to the German officers, insisting he didn't understand where his buddy had gone. Their friendship was well known. No one suspected him. He even took part in the search, claiming the Prussian ran after skirts every evening. In the end, they arrested an old retired gendarme who had a pretty daughter and ran an inn in a neighboring village. He was shot,